They thought I was a failure. For 15 years my family pitied me. They whispered behind my back, passed over my accomplishments, and labeled me the dreamer, who threw away a prestigious degree to chase digital nonsense. They saw the old car, the modest apartment, the missed reunions, and assumed I had nothing to show for my life. What they didn't know was that behind the curtain I was building an empire. One NFT at a time. One breakthrough at a time. One quiet victory after another. And when Forbes dropped the article revealing that the so-called black sheep was now worth over $5 billion, everything changed. They showed up to the family reunion expecting the same story. What they got was a private jet, a resort on my Caribbean island, and a truth they could no longer ignore. I didn't build my empire for them. But now they'd finally see it with their own eyes. This is the story of how I went from being doubted by everyone to owning the room they thought I didn't belong in. And it all started with one word: no. Before we dive into this story, I just want to say, thank you. Thank you for being here, for clicking play, and for giving your time to listen. Whether you've been with me from the beginning or this is your first video, your presence means more than you know. Every like, every comment, every person who takes a moment to share their thoughts, it all helps me keep creating content that matters. Content that tells stories that feel real. Stories about family, about legacy, about being doubted, and rising anyway. If you've ever felt overlooked, if you've ever chased a dream when no one else believed in it, this one's for you. So grab a cup of coffee, settle in somewhere quiet, and come with me, because today I'm going to tell you a story, not just about success but about silence, strength, and the moment everything changed. Let's begin. The engraved envelope lay unopened on the desk in my downtown Chicago condo, the morning sun casting a soft glow across the hardwood floors. It was the annual Barrett family reunion invitation, an event I hadn't attended in over a decade. 14 years of self-imposed distance were about to end, and oddly enough, not on my terms. I tapped my phone screen again, reading the headline for what felt like the 100th time. Forbes 40 Under 40. Ezra Barrett's AI art platform hits $4.2 billion valuation. The article was going live tomorrow. Perfect timing, just 48 hours before the family reunion. My secret was out. "Mr. Barrett?" My assistant buzzed through the intercom. "Your sister Lila is on line 1 again." Of course she was. The family group chat had been blowing up since the embargo lifted. I sighed and picked up the line. "Hey Lila." "What the hell, Ezra?" she barked. "You let us believe you were living paycheck to paycheck. I just got a call from the Times asking about my billionaire brother. You want to explain that?" I leaned back, staring out at Lake Michigan. "You'll have to read the article. It's got all the details." "Cut the crap. You've been hiding this for years. Mom and Dad have been worried sick." "Worried?" I laughed bitterly. "You mean the weekly guilt trips about me wasting my engineering degree? The endless jabs about growing up? They were just trying to help you. No. They wanted to mold me, like they did with you. You played their game. Business school, management track, working at Dad's firm. I didn't." There was silence. Lila had always been the polished one, the golden child. Finally, she whispered, "How long have you been hiding this?" I walked over to the window, watching a drone deliver groceries to a rooftop below. "Remember when I moved to that tiny loft in Austin back in 2011? Told everyone I was freelancing." She hesitated. "That was 14 years ago." Yep. What no one knew then was I'd already sold my first AI-generated art series for $60,000. Lila didn't respond, but I could feel her scrambling to process it. "And now," I added softly, "now I own 3 companies, 2 patents, and a penthouse none of you have ever stepped foot in." The reunion was going to be interesting. 50 grand? That long ago? Lila's voice cracked through the speaker. "Yup," I said casually. "And 6 months later I sold another for 200. By the time Dad was telling everyone over Turkey that I was just going through a digital art phase, I'd hit my first million." I could almost hear her calculating in her head. "But you asked Mom and Dad for help with rent. You drove that awful old Civic until what, last year?" "I didn't ask for help. I pitched them. I asked them to invest in my startup. They said no, loudly. Remember? Dad told me to stop playing with screensavers and get serious about life." She didn't say anything. "And the Civic? That was a choice. So is this penthouse. So is the jet. The jet? She echoed, voice suddenly smaller. Private. Gulfstream G800. Just picked it up last spring. Ezra, how rich are you? I grinned, thinking back to all those holiday dinners where I was the cautionary tale. The way our youngest sister, Elise, used to toss her platinum Amex on the table and say, "I've got this one," like she was rescuing me from poverty. The Forbes piece is saying $4.2 billion. But they're off. It's closer to 5. The sound Lila made was somewhere between a gasp and a cough. Well, I continued smoothly, I've got a board meeting in 10 minutes. And Lila? I'll see you at the reunion. I hung up before she could answer, then pressed the intercom. Amelia, is everything confirmed for the family event? Yes, Mr. Barrett. The jet's fueled. Car service is arranged. Each family member will be picked up in individual black Rolls-Royces. Venue's been shifted to your Lake Geneva estate per your request. NDAs have been sent to all event staff. Perfect. I glanced at the gold-foiled invitation again. For 14 years I wore the mask they were comfortable with. The eccentric dreamer, who couldn't hack adulthood. The son who needed advice, guidance, and plenty of unsolicited pity. But this year, my phone buzzed with a message from Elise. All lowercase like always. Wait, this Forbes thing is real? I didn't answer. This was the same Elise who never shut up about her 6-figure corporate gig, who liked to say I was still finding my passion, while she was climbing the ladder. The intercom buzzed again. Mr. Barrett? Your parents are online too. I didn't hesitate. Tell them I'm in a meeting. I glanced at my watch. And Amelia, call the helipad. I think I'll take the helicopter to the board meeting today. Yes, Mr. Barrett, came her prompt reply. As I slipped on my tailored navy overcoat and adjusted my cufflinks, my mind drifted back, 15 years ago. The day everything changed. Digital art isn't real art, Ezra. My father's voice had echoed across the dining room in that deep, commanding tone he always used when he thought he was ending a discussion. And this crypto nonsense? It's a fad. No one's going to spend real money on pixelated pictures. I was 23 then. Fresh out of Northwestern, degree in financial economics, paid for in full by the family. I'd been expected to join Barrett and Associates, my father's firm, by the end of the summer. Instead, I'd started pitching NFTs and generative art at tech meetups in Wicker Park. Actually, Dad, I had begun, I just sold my first. Enough, he snapped. If you want to waste time on fantasy, fine. But you'll do it without our support. No job. No money. No second chances. Mom reached across the table, resting her manicured hand on mine. Ezra, sweetheart, we just want what's best for you. Something stable. Something respectable. I looked around the table. Dad's hard stare. Mom's sympathetic disappointment. Lila with her usual smirk. Elise, sipping her wine, already bored with the conversation. That was the moment. I decided not to say another word. I wouldn't tell them about the $50,000 I'd just made. Or the 3 gallery owners fighting over my next release. Or the blockchain startups courting me for licensing deals. You're right, I'd said, pushing back from the table. I need to figure it out on my own. 2 weeks later, I moved into a cramped, windowless loft on the south side. They assumed I was broke. Too proud to come home. But I was building something. The first year I barely slept. I coded my own smart contracts, collaborated with digital sculptors, and launched my first major collection, Binary Soul. It sold out in under 3 hours, netting $1.2 million. I reinvested every cent. Within months, I had a development team. We created platforms for emerging artists, built AI art generators, and launched curated NFT auctions. The traditional art world didn't know what hit them. And every time I visited home, I played the part. Drove the Civic, wore thrift store flannels, said no when Mom offered rent money. I'm doing okay, I'd smile. By the end of year 1, I was worth $10 million. By year 3, $120 million. But to them, I was still just Ezra, the dreamer with no direction. Now, 15 years later, as I stepped into my private helicopter on the rooftop helipad, I couldn't help but marvel at how a small act of self-preservation had snowballed into the secret of a lifetime. What started as a way to avoid judgment had turned into a double life. And in 2 days the truth would finally come out. My phone buzzed again. Dad, we need to talk. No. I smiled, flipped the phone face down and powered it off. They could wait. After a decade and a half of silence, skepticism and passive-aggressive jabs, they were about to get the truth. All of it. And I was going to make sure it landed like a meteor. The Forbes article dropped at 5 a.m. Central. I was already up, coffee in hand, watching the digital wildfire spread across every news site, finance blog and social feed I monitored. The $5 billion secret. How Ezra Barrett revolutionized digital art from a Chicago loft. The photo I'd selected for the story led the piece. Me standing in a minimalist gallery, flanked by interactive installations from my first global show. I wore a tailored gray suit that probably cost more than Elise's luxury SUV. It wasn't just about the number. It was the story, the 15 years of grit, tech innovation, partnerships and breakthroughs. Every chapter I'd kept from them was now laid out in print. My phone lit up like Times Square. Lila, wait. This is real? Elise, $5 billion. Why didn't you ever say anything? Mom, Ezra, please call. We're shocked. Dad, we should talk. Immediately. Aunt Camille, honey, is this really you in Forbes? Your uncle's jaw dropped. I muted the group thread and opened my inbox. Hundreds of new emails. CNBC, The Wall Street Journal, TEDx, dozens of VC firms. But one name jumped out. Albert Chin. My father's longtime business partner. Ezra, I believe there's tremendous synergy between Barrett Investments and your platform. Let's talk. Your father may have been skeptical, but I see great potential here. I actually laughed out loud. That same Albert who'd kicked me out of his boardroom 3 years ago for wasting everyone's time with internet cartoons. My intercom buzzed. Mr. Barrett? Your mother is here in the lobby. She's very persistent. I tapped the security feed. There she was, Alina Barrett. Impeccably dressed, hair perfect, pearl earrings in place. But her face was different. Flushed. Eyes wild. Pleading with security. Let her up, I said, already knowing this moment had been a long time coming. The elevator doors opened into the penthouse. She stepped out, took one look at the view of Lake Michigan, the museum-grade artwork, the custom piano, and froze. Ezra. She took a breath, her voice brittle. What is all of this? This. I gestured around at the polished marble floors, the gallery wall, the panoramic view of Lake Michigan. This is my real home, Mom. Not the little River North apartment I keep just for family visits. She walked toward the floor-to-ceiling window, her heels clicking like a metronome across the stone. How long have you? How did this even happen? 15 years, I said simply, pouring her a cup of coffee from the copper-finished machine. Since the day you and Dad said my digital art would never mean anything. She turned back to me, her expression a mix of confusion and something like grief. But, you struggled. We saw it. The tiny loft, the old Civic. You asked us for help with rent. I never asked for help, I corrected gently. I asked you both to invest. There's a difference. And everything else, the car, the apartment, that was all part of the act. Theater, she repeated, her voice rising. You're telling me this was all an act? No, Mom. I let you see what you wanted to see. You were so convinced I was failing you never looked closer. No one did. She sank into one of the leather chairs by the fireplace, her posture collapsing in a way I'd never seen. Does anyone else in the family know? Marcus found out yesterday. The press release went live. I assume he called. She nodded weakly. He did. But your father said it had to be some mistake. Some other Ezra Barrett. I walked to my desk and pulled out a folder. Here. This was the proposal I brought Dad 3 years ago. I asked him to invest $1 million. If he had, that stake would now be worth just over $100 million. Her hands shook as she opened the folder. He said you were asking for a handout, she whispered. That you were too proud to admit your art wasn't working. And I believed him. Just like you believed I was failing. Tell me, Mom, did you ever come to one of my exhibitions? Even Google my name? She didn't answer. He didn't have to. I walked back to the window and glanced out over the skyline. The family reunion is in 2 days. I've made a few updates. Updates. I bought out the resort where it was supposed to be. Too public. Everyone will be picked up by my drivers, flown on my jet. She blinked. Flown, where? Pie Island, I said, sipping my coffee. In the Caribbean. Picked it up last year after my first billion-dollar deal closed. I turned to face her. And Mom? This time, I won't be the one sitting quietly while everyone brags about quarterly bonuses and vacation homes. This time I've got a few things to say. She rose from the chair slowly, smoothing her designer skirt with trembling hands. Your father, when he sees all this? I gave a small nod. When he sees all this, he'll have no choice but to admit the truth, that the son he thought was wasting his Ivy League degree on internet doodles built something larger than his entire portfolio. Larger than this whole family legacy. A quiet smile touched my lips. And that's just the beginning. I walked her to the private elevator. As she stepped in, I paused and added, "Oh, and Mom? That Bentley you always wanted, the one Dad said was too extravagant? I bought 3 last month. One in white. Just because I could." The doors slid shut on her stunned expression. The moment she was gone, I called my assistant. "Amelia, are we all set for the reunion?" "Yes, Mr. Barrett," she said. "The island staff is fully briefed. Personalized documentation packets have been prepared for each family member, showing the exact investment opportunities they turned down, and what those shares are worth today. The success timeline video is edited and ready for presentation." "Perfect," I said, walking toward the bar and pouring a splash of sparkling water. I finally opened the family group chat and typed one short message. "Looking forward to seeing everyone at the reunion. Dress for a private island. Transportation will be provided." Then I sat down, opened my laptop and checked the markets. The Forbes piece had gone viral. Overnight, my company's stock had jumped nearly 12%. By 8 a.m., another billion had been added to my net worth, before I'd even finished my coffee. I imagined Dad in his home office, scrolling the article in disbelief. Elise and Lila texting each other frantically, trying to understand how the underachiever just became one of the richest men in the country. The reunion was going to be memorable. My phone buzzed again. A message from my father. "We need to talk before the reunion." "Privately," I replied. "Everything will be discussed there, Dad. Isn't that what family reunions are for? Sharing our success?" Then I called Amelia again. "Have the helipad on the island repainted. I want my name clearly visible from the air." "It's already done, Mr. Barrett. Anything else?" I looked out across the skyline. "Not yet," I said. "But soon." "Yes. And make sure the Forbes article is framed and hanging in every guest suite and lounge at the resort. I want it to be the first thing they see wherever they look." As I ended the call with Amelia, I caught my reflection in the window. Confident. Composed. Unapologetically successful. The countdown to the reunion was over. The morning of the Barrett family reunion dawned bright and cloudless. I stood at the edge of my private airfield just outside of Chicago, hands clasped behind my back, as 3 black Rolls-Royces approached in perfect formation. They came to a slow stop. The doors opened. First out was my father, usually commanding, now visibly uncertain. Then my mother, still rattled from our last conversation. Marcus, Lila, Elise, and a parade of aunts, uncles, and cousins followed, each wearing some mix of awe, suspicion, or masked envy. And there, waiting behind me like a monument to irony, stood my private jet. Sleek, massive, and unmistakable, with Barrett Digital Holdings elegantly painted along the side. "Welcome, everyone," I said, my voice crisp as it carried over the tarmac. "I trust the ride here was comfortable." "Ezra," my father said, stepping forward, trying to summon his old authority. "This is unnecessary. A perfectly fine reunion could have been held at the resort." "The resort was too public," I replied. "This reunion is about clarity and legacy, and I thought a little privacy might help." "On your island?" Elise muttered, clutching her handbag like a life preserver. "Of course you have an island." The flight was an event in itself. Leather seats, gold-trimmed fixtures, vintage champagne served by uniformed attendants. I watched their eyes flit nervously between the priceless artwork and handcrafted finishes. "Wait, is that an actual Picasso?" Aunt Camille whispered, peering at the painting on the far wall. I nodded. "One of 3 I picked up last year." My father cleared his throat. "Ezra, perhaps we could." "We'll talk when we land, Dad," I interrupted smoothly. "In the meantime, relax. The champagne alone costs more than Barrett Investments cleared last quarter." He winced. "Good. 2 hours later, the jet began its descent. My family crowded the windows. 300 acres of lush, private Caribbean paradise came into view. White sand beaches, a gleaming resort complex, and just beyond the airstrip, my name, Ezra Barrett, etched into the hill in bold, shining white letters. Unmissable. Undeniable. As the wheels touched down on the freshly repainted helipad, I heard Elise gasp. Surrounding the pad were towering digital displays, rotating projections of my most successful NFT and AI-generated art collections. Each piece was accompanied by its original sale price in bold, luminous type. Millions. Dozens of millions. All on display for my family to witness the empire they never saw coming. "Welcome to Barrett Island," I said as they disembarked. "My little corner of paradise." Little. Marcus croaked wide-eyed. Before us stretched a breathtaking fusion of glass, stone, and tropical greenery. The resort spanned acres of beachfront and forest, a seamless blend of design and nature. Waterfalls, sky bridges, infinity pools, all built from scratch to my vision. "Your rooms have been assigned," I continued. "There's some light reading waiting for you. I suggest you go through it before dinner." Each folder was personalized. For my father, a timeline of every pitch he declined, annotated with current valuations totaling over $700 million. For Elise, a breakdown comparing her six-figure income to the interest I earned daily. For Marcus, a confidential report showing how his firm had hemorrhaged millions after refusing to partner with my platform. I gave them an hour. Then the invitation came. "Join me in the main dining hall." The room was spectacular, cathedral ceilings, walls of glass opening to the sea, a table carved from a single slab of polished native stone. Each place setting gleamed under soft lighting, worth more than a luxury sedan. And mounted between the windows in matching gold frames was the Forbes article. 4 of them, just to be sure. They arrived slowly, stiff in posture, subdued in voice. They'd changed into designer evening wear, but somehow it all looked off. "Out of place here." "Please," I said, motioning to the table. "Have a seat. We have a lot to talk about." My father was first to speak, clearing his throat. "Ezra, I think I speak for all of us when I say we're surprised." I chuckled lightly. "Surprised. That's your word. Not hurt, not disappointed I kept this from you. Just surprised." "We didn't know," my mother whispered. "No," I said. "You didn't want to. Every time I brought up my work, you changed the topic. Every time I offered you a chance to invest, you brushed me off." "But the car, the apartment," Elise added, hesitant. "You let me cover meals." "I thought that I was broke?" I finished. "Did it make you feel important? Playing the savior?" Her cheeks flushed. She didn't answer. She didn't need to. "Let me show you something," I said, tapping a control panel embedded in the side of the dining table. Soft mechanical hums filled the room as high-resolution screens descended from the ceiling. One by one they came to life, displaying a curated timeline of my success. And next to each milestone, their words. "Digital art isn't real art. Dad. My first collection sells for $50,000. When are you going to get a real job? Mom. Company valuation crosses $10 million. At least I can afford to help my brother out. Elise. Net worth surpasses $500 million. We don't invest in internet pictures. Dad's firm. Barrett Digital Holdings hits $1 billion valuation. Every clip, every quote, every dismissive laugh. It was all there. I remembered every single word," I said quietly. "And with each one I built something bigger." My father stared at the screen. "But why?" His voice cracked. "Why hide it from us?" "Because you all needed to learn something," I said. "Success doesn't always wear a suit. Innovation doesn't always come from a boardroom. Sometimes the so-called disappointment is just a visionary playing the long game." I walked toward the window overlooking the ocean. "You know what the hardest part was?" I asked, not expecting an answer. "It wasn't hiding the money, or pretending I was barely getting by. It was watching you all celebrate mediocrity, while mocking something revolutionary." "Mediocrity?" Marcus snapped, sitting straighter in his chair. "Yes, Marcus. Mediocrity. You walked the path Dad laid out like it was sacred. You played it safe. Made the safe moves." I turned to Elise. And you? You flaunted your six-figure salary like it was rare air. I was making that before lunch. That's enough, my father said, standing. You've made your point. We were wrong. Is that what you want to hear? No, I said calmly. I want you to understand. I waved my hand over the control panel again. New visuals filled the screens, an interactive platform glowing and sleek. This is my next project. A decentralized AI-powered art ecosystem launching next month. Estimated valuation, $10 billion. I paused. I'm showing it to you now, because this time I want you to see the future before it arrives. The room fell into heavy silence. For once they weren't doubting me. They were listening. Finally, my mother spoke. We're proud of you, Ezra. We should have been proud all along. I nodded, soft but firm. Thank you, Mom. But I didn't do this for your pride. I looked around the room, at the faces that had once dismissed, doubted, and underestimated me. I did it because it was my vision. My dream. Then I smiled. And now? It's my empire. Marcus cleared his throat. So, what happens now? Now. I raised my glass. Now we have dinner. As a family. But this time it's on my terms. No masks. No facades. No more playing the struggling artist, the black sheep, the disappointment. And tomorrow, I added, we'll tour the island. And I'll show you, really show you, what your son, your brother, your nephew has built, while no one was paying attention. I lifted my glass. To the truth. Finally. The others followed, tentative but sincere. Glasses clinked. Expressions softened. The rest of the evening passed in a quiet blur, gourmet food plated like art, vintage wines flowing freely, and conversations that started stiff but warmed over time. Slowly my family began to see me. Really see me. Not the version they had painted for 15 years. But the man I had become. Later, as they headed to their suites, I remained in the dining room, staring out over the ocean as the moonlight shimmered on the waves. Amelia, my assistant, appeared at my side. Was it worth it? She asked softly. The big reveal? I thought about the stunned expressions, the long silences, the shifting tones. Yes, I said. But not for the reasons I expected. It wasn't about proving them wrong anymore. It was about finally living openly. Being wholly myself. And tomorrow I'd show them the future. Their world of conservative investments and outdated legacy thinking was fading. It was time they saw that the man they once dismissed as a dreamer hadn't just dreamed. He had built. Quietly. Powerfully. Relentlessly. That night I found a note slipped under my door. Handwritten, familiar. Ezra, I was wrong. Not just about your business. About everything. You didn't just succeed. You changed the game. I'm sorry I didn't see it sooner. Dad. I placed it in a frame beside the receipt from my very first NFT sale. $50,000. One a beginning. The other a breakthrough. The next morning I watched my family gather for breakfast. Something in them changed. And I realized, success isn't always about proving them wrong. Sometimes it's about proving yourself right. And doing it your way. If you've made it this far, I want to thank you for listening, not just to my story but to the truth behind it. I didn't share this to flex or boast. I shared it because I know there's someone out there, maybe you, who's been doubted, dismissed, overlooked. Someone quietly building, creating, dreaming, while everyone else tells them to get real. So here's what I want from you. Leave a comment below. Not just for me but for you. Tell me, have you ever been the underdog? The black sheep? The one they didn't believe in? I want to hear your story. Let's create a space where people like us, visionaries, creators, late bloomers, lift each other up. And if this story inspired you, drop a word of encouragement. Not just for me but for everyone else reading. We all need it. And here's my advice. Stop waiting for permission to chase what sets your soul on fire. You don't need your family's approval. You don't need the world's validation. The only green light that matters is your own. Play the long game. Keep building. Keep moving in silence if you have to. Because when the time comes to reveal what you've built, trust me, it'll speak for itself. Don't let them define you. Define yourself. And when the moment comes, step into it fully. Let them see exactly who they underestimated. Because sometimes the sweetest success isn't loud. It's the quiet kind that reshapes everything while they weren't paying attention. So drop a comment, subscribe if you haven't, and share this with someone who needs to hear it. I've told my story. Now it's time for yours. Ezra Barrett. Builder. Dreamer. Unapologetically underestimated. Heal now.